The first time the HOA president's shiny SUV blocked my truck at dawn, I figured it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe she'd missed her driveway. Maybe she was running late. Maybe she'd apologize. But then she looked right at me through that fancy tinted glass and just smirked, like she wanted me to complain, like I was the punchline in a joke she'd been telling her friends. Something inside me just snapped right there. And, well, that's where this whole circus began. Picture this. Me, standing on my own front steps in a battered old robe, clutching my coffee, the scent of diesel from her SUV mixing with the clean snap of morning air and new gravel. I had the sheriff's number ready, thumb hovering, trying to figure out how far I could push before folks around here started whispering I'd finally lost it. But it was one of those moments where you just know. If you let it slide once, you'll spend the rest of your life getting rolled over by people like that. I wasn't born to be a doormat, you know what I mean? Now, I'd already watched the HOA treat my place like their own overflow lot for months. Every time there was a party at the clubhouse, suddenly my gravel became their personal valet lane. I tried being neighborly, left notes, made calls, even printed up flyers. Management company gave me the runaround, board members snickered at the diner, and next thing I know, I'm getting official warnings about my lawn. Funny how the people breaking the rules always seem to have the most opinions about yours. So, yeah, by the time her SUV hemmed me in, I'd been keeping records, photos, timestamps, even rigged up a dash cam just for proof. Not that any of it mattered. Around here, the HOA felt like a royal family, and the rest of us were supposed to bow, keep quiet, and pretend the rules actually applied to everyone. Only, see, I grew up where property lines meant something. Out on the farm, you crossed a fence, you got one warning, and then it was your problem. I wasn't about to let a handful of city transplants with big ideas and small-town power plays walk all over me just because they'd never had to dig a fence post in their life. After that morning, I fired off a certified letter. Legal language, references to county codes, a little wisdom from my uncle the retired deputy. Set a deadline, laid it out plain, trespass again, and I'll take it to court. They ignored me, of course. Figured I was just another pushover with no stomach for a real fight. What they didn't know? I spent the next week in my workshop welding spikes onto rubber mats and drawing up vehicle damage possible signs. Totally legal, totally above board. Added a little theater with some homemade landmines, plastic canisters loaded with nothing but compressed air and biodegradable orange dye. Scary as hell if you didn't know better, but harmless. I'd tested them on the old mower. The cloud of neon dust was a thing of beauty. Before I set up, I called the sheriff, laid it all out. Caldwell, old school guy, knew my family, took one look and said, "So long as it's legal, it's your land, your headache. Maybe give him a scare." That was all I needed. That night, I laid the mats out just inside the property line, hooked up the canisters, checked the signs. Felt like a kid on Christmas Eve, half dreading, half itching for that first customer. Next morning, sure enough, the president's SUV rolled in just before dawn. I was at the window, phone in hand, catching every second. She parks, steps out, heels clicking, all confidence. Front tire rolls over the first canister. Hiss, boom, cloud of orange. She jumps back, screaming, and a second canister lets loose, dusting her car head to toe in radioactive tangerine. Porch lights come on all up the street. I just sipped my coffee and waited for her to threaten me, which she did, loudly. Sheriff shows up, Caldwell himself, leans against his cruiser, tells her everything's legal. Maybe next time she reads the signs. Watching the power shift in real time? Can't describe that feeling. She storms off, SUV trailing orange, neighbors filming from behind their blinds. Word travels fast in a small town. By noon, my video's on Facebook, and half the neighborhood's calling me a hero. But that was just round one. HOA called an emergency meeting, sent me a certified letter threatening fines and lawsuits for dangerous devices. I read it, laughed, and filed it with the others. I'd memorized the bylaws. Nothing about dye packs, nothing about spike mats, everything about my right to defend my own damn driveway. But I knew this wasn't about rules. It was about power, and people like that never give it up easy. That night, I replaced the mats with heavier ones, sharpened up the warnings, added a second row of signs at eye level. Wasn't afraid, just determined. And then, around 2 a.m., motion sensors picked up movement. Two figures, flashlights, poking around my driveway with a stick. One trips the hose, gets a face full of blue dye. They run off screaming, leaving blue footprints all the way down the street. Sheriff stops by in the morning, grinning, asks if I want to press charges. I say no, just keep the tape on file. He nods, says, guess they learned. After that, the HOA tried every angle: code violations, noise complaints, anonymous notes. I ignored the bait, played the friendly neighbor, waved at dog walkers, gave coffee to the mail carrier, helped old Mr. Grady with his groceries. Little by little, people started to shift. Instead of avoiding me, they'd nod. Some even thanked me. One guy, cap pulled low, knocks on my door with a stack of old property records. Turns out, the HOA had been overreaching for years. Together, we dug into deeds, found gaps, found leverage. Next HOA meeting, I showed up with my folder, handed out copies, laid out the timeline. Calm, matter of fact, no yelling. The board fidgeted, the president's face went white. I told them I'd file with the county if the harassment kept up, and invited anyone to come check my setup in daylight. After that, things changed. My driveway became legend. People slowed to stare, kids whispered, even delivery drivers snapped photos. But the board started fighting dirty. First, a city inspector showed up, clipboard in hand, looking for violations. I walked him around, explained everything, poured him coffee. He left with nothing. Then the county sent an environmental officer, worried about contamination. I handed over the safety data sheets, showed the sheriff's sign-off. Strike two. All the while, I kept upgrading. Smarter canisters, motion-triggered speakers, hidden cameras. My own little fortress. And still, they didn't let up. My mailbox was tampered with, my dock light smashed, notes shoved under the door. Caldwell increased patrols, and the neighbors started watching out for me. My coalition grew. Folks fed up with being pushed around. We gathered, compared fines, found patterns, even budget fraud. Suddenly, the board was vulnerable. The president herself marched up my driveway one day, furious, tried to talk like adults. I let her rant, then played video from the night her cousin got blue dye in the face. She left rattled. Next, we circulated a petition, door to door. People signed, slow at first, then all at once. In 2 weeks, we forced a vote. The night before, someone tried to plant evidence against me, left a bag with tools, a map, a crowbar. Caldwell handled it. We didn't flinch. Election night, the old board was swept out. New members voted in. But it didn't end there. My cameras caught a shadowy figure at my mailbox, got clear shots of another cousin of the old president planting flyers accusing me of being a danger to the neighborhood. Caldwell advised holding off pressing charges. Better to use the evidence as leverage. In the meantime, I joined new meetings, helped draft actual security policies, offered my experience to neighbors. The mood shifted, cautious optimism mixing with old suspicion. The former president's SUV still lingered at the edge of town, and intimidation flared up here and there. Vandalism, drones, late-night texts. But it wasn't working anymore. The tide had turned. Then, things escalated. Late one night, my sensors caught 2 figures by the dock with a gas can. I called Caldwell. He rolled up, caught them cold. Arson attempt, stopped in its tracks. One was linked back to the old president. The county finally moved. Indictments for fraud, harassment, conspiracy. News vans camped out. Neighbors gave interviews. The old board's secrets spilled out for everyone to see. When winter finally settled, the neighborhood changed. Old rules tossed out. New board publishing minutes. Neighbors stopping to chat instead of hiding. My deterrence gear, mats, canisters, warning signs, got packed away in the shed, piece by piece. The driveway became a driveway again, not a war zone. Kids biked past, people waved, and I got more offers for coffee and barbecue than I'd ever had before. But habits from a siege are hard to shake. I kept the cameras, still checked for late-night visitors, still caught myself walking the perimeter before dawn. But as the weeks went by, the air lightened. People started sharing their own stories, how they'd felt trapped, how the fines and threats had ruled their lives. Now, with the old guard gone, folks felt free to plant gardens again, host parties, just live. At the December meeting, I stood up and reminded everyone. Power is easy to abuse, and you only keep your rights if you guard them, together. When folks asked if I'd run for the board, I just laughed. Said I'd rather be out on the lake with my coffee and a fishing pole. As the legal cases dragged on, Caldwell, soon to retire, stopped by and told me, "You gave this town one hell of a show." We stood together, steam rising off our thermoses, watching the ice form on the water. Felt like closure, or as close as you ever get. The holidays came and went. Kids dropped off drawings of my magic driveway. Neighbors brought cookies. The new board sent a card signed by half the town. But then, just as things felt safe, a last letter landed. Threats of a countersuit, demands to preserve evidence for trial. I read it, filed it away, didn't even feel a spark of anger. It was just the echo of a battle already decided. By New Year's, the last dye canister was boxed up, the mats rolled and shelved, the signs taken down. Only the cameras remained, and even those felt more like insurance than armor now. The driveway looked like any other, just gravel and asphalt. No bright colors, no drama. Sometimes, when I stood there in the snow, I'd picture the whole story sped up like a movie. SUVs parking, dye exploding, sheriff rolling up, neighbors cheering. Almost hard to believe it all happened. But the lesson stuck. If you want peace, sometimes you have to fight for it. And sometimes, you have to fight so well, you never have to fight again. So tell me, if it was your driveway, your home, your fight, would you have done the same? Or would you have let them win? I'd love to know. Drop a comment, share your story. Let's talk about where the line really is between keeping the peace and standing your ground. Because out here, it's not just gravel and fences. It's everything that makes a place worth calling home.